And we are live. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Bigfoot Odyssey's Researchers Report. Got a great show for you tonight. As always, with me is our lovely producer and co-host, Miss Daniela Iolo, coming to us all the way from Lancaster, England.
Good evening.
And thank you, Daniela. And our guest for tonight, creator and host of the Paranormal Portal, Mr. Brent Thomas, and co-host Don Longbeard. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having us. We're thrilled to be here.
Absolutely. Now, we were going to schedule you guys for later, and we had Leon Thompson from Bigfoot Okanagan. He got sick, and he couldn't make it, and I think he's in the hospital, Daniela?
He is, yeah. As far as I know, he's still in the hospital, and
yeah. So thoughts and prayers for Leon Thompson from Bigfoot Okanagan. We hope he's all right and can get back with us later. We are going to have a special guest in about 30 minutes. Shane Carpenter from OZARK Mountain SASQUATCH is gonna join us for an update. Is that correct?
Yeah, he's got some new stuff to tell us. He's had a close encounter on his on their FLIR thermal.
That's
camera.
right. I heard that. A real close encounter. If it looks like that I'm broadcasting from my truck, it's because I am. And I know, like, we're totally professional here. But so Brent, you guys love what you guys do. It's an awesome show. Mostly paranormal stuff, but you do touch on cryptid stuff every now and then. And like we told people before, if anybody paid attention, I don't know if they did or not, but there's a reason we call this Researchers Report. It's not just Bigfoot. We kind of want to touch on, researchers from everywhere, ghost stuff and UFO stuff too. But what got you excited enough to want to do your own show and name it such a cool name?
Oh, well, thank you first and foremost. But I've always been absolutely enthralled by the paranormal and in all shapes and sizes. As far as I'm enthusiastic about the UFO situations. I'm enthusiastic about cryptids, Bigfoot, Dogman. I'm enthusiastic about the ghost and haunting and even dimensional slips, time slips, Mandela effect. It all just really has fascinated me my whole life. Now, what I think fascinates me the most is that I think that what it does is it demonstrates that we don't have this all figured out, that there's still mystery in the world. There's still things that needed to be figured out. And there's still adventure left. I think so. And it kind of, in a romantic way, I guess, it really just intrigues the hell out of me that we have so far to go. And I love that the paranormal happens. And I don't think it happens because reality went sideways or there was some kind of glitch. I think it's like the breadcrumbs demonstrating the dynamic and fluid nature of reality that we live in. And we have a lot to learn. So I've always been fascinated by this and always been learning and pursuing it wherever I can. But I happen to work at a company along with Chris Geo, who owns and operates Truth Frequency Radio Network. And I just pitched it to him one day, and he said, yeah, let's do it. And it's funny because I pitched it in such a way as, hey, I want to do the show, and boom, the name came to my head. I said, I want to call it Paranormal Portal, and boom, the concept came to me, and it just kind of like fell out of my mouth. So it was almost like on some ethereal level, this was already something that was supposed to happen. It just kind of came out, and he said, sounds great, let's do it. And it's just spiderweb from there.
Well, I know you guys were on my radar for a while, but you do your own show and you don't have a whole lot of time to watch other people's stuff a whole lot. But once I did start watching it, and I would tell anybody, please go and subscribe to Paranormal Portal. The bedtime stories, I just started working backwards. and they're great, man. But Don, same question for you, man.
I never really got into, I'm kind of here more as the skeptic. I ended up working with Brent, and that's how we found out, how we met each other. And one person said that, yeah, he's got a show about paranormal stuff. And I said, well, what all does he talk about? Well, he talks about Bigfoot and all those kinds of things. That's how it was explained, those kinds of things. And, I guess he does some like alien stuff and talks about ghosts and spirits and things like that. And I'm like, really? So I wandered over to him and started talking with him, and I said, "Hey, can I come crash your show for a night and just sit and listen?" He goes, "How about you write something and you present on the show?" I said, "You mean like be on your show?" And he says, "Yeah, why can't you do it like next Friday?" Next Friday just happened to be April 1st. And so I wasn't sure if he was pulling my leg or not. So, sure enough, I did some research, on some UFO stuff regarding Eisenhower. And sure enough, we did a show. We passed the mic for a while, but we did the show, and it was fun, and I just loved it. Now, I've always been more interested in alien kind of stuff because it's always more fascinated me, because I've done a lot of reading of sci-fi and all that kind of stuff. And I really got away from it when I was a kid. I actually grew up in the Olympic Peninsula of Washington. And if you know anything about Bigfoot, the Pacific Northwest, that particular part of the Pacific Northwest is, rife with stories of Bigfoot and cryptids and things like that. But they never really caught me as a kid. But when I met Brent, I'm like, you know what? Let's get back into this. So I'm here as kind of a skeptic believer. I mean, I keep an open mind. It intrigues me, and I love doing the show with Brent. I mean, have a great time, and we get into a lot of different conversations about things. But that's pretty much where I am. I'm a skeptic believer. You show me, give me some proof, and I'll look at it, talk about it. Let's make some sense out of it, and then whether I like it or not, it's still a show, and doggone it, I'll let you know if I believe it or not. So there you go.
Well, I understand that perfectly. What about Don? What about your level of belief? Since you started.
Yeah, I've never really necessarily believed ghosts and goblins and cryptids, and especially dogman. I don't want to get into that.
Yeah, I have trouble with that too.
But I mean, I've always been skeptical about it. But after I've talked to the many people we've talked to on the show, and the information that's been passed to me, and when you can break it down into, this is other creatures do this, like infrasound for as an example, lions and tigers and bears. Oh my, lions have infrasound. They use infrasound in their hunt. So it's a viable thing. We haven't explored the bulk of the United States by foot. Who knows what's out there? Canada, who knows what kind of weird stuff's down in Mexico, So, I mean, the oceans are mostly unexplored because we can't get there. So it's very, in my opinion, along with aliens, it's very possible these things are there. We just haven't seen them, or they haven't made themselves, known, haven't showed themselves to us, or haven't proved their existence necessarily prove their existence. And so that's what I'm here for. I want to see that. I want to be there when that happens. So
awesome. And there's nothing. Oh, I'm sorry, Danielle. I was just going to say that there's nothing wrong playing devil's advocate, but I do want to say right quick for everybody in the chat. I forgot to mention this earlier. Please keep it clean. We do have our moderators in there, our bulldog moderators that we appreciate so much. Just keep it clean for us, guys. That's all we ask. They will time you out, and we do appreciate that. And we will take questions a little bit later on, and just make sure you have those all in caps for us. It makes us a little bit easier to pick them out. I'm sorry, Daniela, go ahead.
I was just saying, it's like, I think it's quite hard to, you're talking about, don't talk about Dogman, but I think it's quite hard to dismiss those encounters. And there's just too much, if you're going to dismiss that, you're going to dismiss everything else, because you got to take these encounters at face value, and some of those Dogman stories, I listened to some of those, the Vic Cundiff ones, and they absolutely scare the hell out of me compared to any other cryptid thing out there. But there's got to be something there. Maybe I don't know. There's got to be something there, though. What it is, I've no idea. But they're as elusive as Bigfoot. They're all in the same. They're all under the same umbrella, as I call it. They're just all. We're looking for them all,
right.
Yeah.
Well, that's like Brent says, a lot, and I'm sure other people have said it too. If you believe in Bigfoot, it's not that big of a stretch to go from Bigfoot to Dogman. Now, the reason I don't want to go into them is because those scare me. It's like, you've got, yeah, you're going to have, peaceful squatches. You're going to have patties. You're going to have googways, and everything in between, but when you get into dogmen, it's just aggression. It's just all aggression, it seems like. And that's why I don't even want to talk about dogmen in my area. Somebody 50 miles from us, one of our good friends, Cindy, she said, "Oh, I think that's dogmen," and she's only 50 miles from us. And I'm like, I don't want to hear about that.
Yeah.
No, you know what? The Bigfoot 5 miles away from me is fine. Dogman 50 miles? Nah, let's not do that.
So for you to be a skeptic, then you've obviously never had an encounter with anything, be it UFO, ghost, nothing at all that's made you think I can't explain that rationally or logically.
Right. No, I've never, to my recollection, I've never had an encounter like that. However, and I know Brent's going to look over and go, well, what happened? What happened that one time we were sitting here doing a show and you had that feeling of just electricity and the hair stood up on your arms. And it has happened. We've been sitting here doing shows and all of a sudden I just get this cold and these chills. And it's during a live show and I'm like, what the heck was that? Brent looks over at his ghost app and goes, oh, there's somebody standing right next to you. Okay. So I felt that. That's empirical evidence to me. I felt that, before I started doing the show. Can't recall anything. Because when I was a kid playing out in the woods in the Pacific Northwest on the Pacific, on the Olympic Peninsula, I never thought about it. I wasn't paying attention. I was being a kid, and nothing ever strange happened to me like what Brent has had happened. But here, since I've started doing the show, there's been a couple incidences, of something that happened that's unexplainable. But I had these sensations that are attributed to this. Well, it makes me a little bit more of a believer. It's like, okay, well, I've experienced this. I can't say it doesn't happen. I can't say exactly what it is, but this is my experience. So, yeah. Yeah.
And we can create an energy. We can create it, can't we, as well, if we really want to. So, but Brent, on the other hand, I know you've had a right mix of experiences with all sorts. I don't even know where to start with you. Maybe you want to start,
I think the earliest experience that I had was I'm going to say that I believe it was a Bigfoot experience, but I'm going to tell you, I never saw it with my face, and I'll explain the narrative and you'll understand why. I lived in a rural part of Minnesota along the Mississippi River, in southern Minnesota, and lived right butting up to a state park there. And I was up in the bluffs with a good friend of mine, my best friend at the time, and we were hiking, and we got up to the bluff, and we were coming down, and it was starting to get dark, so we knew we had to get hurrying down. And so we were going through this dry run ravine. It was only a water run during the snow melt off in the spring, but it over the centuries or whatever, it carved out this really hefty ravine because it's all limestone and sandstone. But we're going down this ravine, and we get to this part that's like a waterfall. Now, in this area of Minnesota, the biggest thing we have is white-tailed deer. I mean, that's it. There's no bear, or at least there may be some every once in a while, but never when I was a kid. Reports have come in more recently that there seems to be some bear and things moving in, but it was just deer. That was the biggest mammal in the area was deer. And so we're hiking down. We stop on this dry waterfall, just taking a breath because it's a little bit of a laborious hike down. And we're standing there, my friend and I, looking down the ravine, when suddenly right behind us, and I mean with around an 8-foot distance is what it felt like, and about maybe 3 feet above us, behind us, was this deep resonating growl. And I'm here to tell you that I felt this growl through every bone in my body. It shook my body and vibrated me. And I was absolutely, completely terrified. I couldn't move. I could not bring myself to turn around because whatever was making that noise was so big and so frightening. And I knew at that point it was going to kill me. I mean, that's where my head was at. And I didn't want to see what it looked like before I died. I didn't want to take that with me into the next world. So I just stood there frozen. My friend was frozen. and it was just sitting there growling for a few seconds, and finally I said, "What the hell is that?" And he said, "I don't know, but we got to get out of here now." And so we flew down this rocky ravine, and how we didn't break our necks running out of there, I don't know. And you often hear people say, well, you know, if it is a Bigfoot, you don't want to run. But I'm a 14-year-old kid at this time, and I have two options, fight or flight. Well, I know whatever made that growl is way out of my sparring league. You know, there's nothing I can do. So the only thing left to do was just to get the hell out of there. So we flew down that ravine. Now, I carried that with me for years because I knew about Bigfoot, but I knew Leonard Nimoy on In Search Of said it was over in the Pacific Northwest.
In my area.
It wasn't in Minnesota. You know, I had no idea of the possibility that these were everywhere.
There was only one, wasn't there? There was only one. So
yeah, as far as yeah, exactly. Yeah, Leonard only said there was one up there. So, but it was there. Whatever it was. And for years, I listened to sound files of different animals trying to figure out what this could have been. I knew it was huge. It was well bigger than a white-tailed deer, and they don't growl. So, but I was petrified. And it wasn't until decades later that I finally started really looking into Bigfoot, and I found out they're everywhere. And I started learning about the signs and things that people say, you know, that they do, like tree breaks, structures, and things like that. And I went back into those same woods as an adult, and there were tree structures. There were weird breaks where there wasn't deadfall taking them down. And trees don't come down from snow load in Minnesota because it's all hardwoods and stuff. You know, I mean, it may happen, but very rarely. But I would find these things around there, and I'm like, oh my God, you know. And then it finally dawned on me what this was. But I carried that sound with me for years, and the only time I ever heard something that reminded me of that sound was when I watched the Jurassic Park movie and I heard that T-Rex growl, and I got chills through my whole body. I was like, oh my God, that's what it sounded like, you know. And so that was my first experience. I can't say beyond a shadow of a doubt it was a Bigfoot, but I have no other idea what it could be, given that there are signs in those woods that would seem to duplicate what people say they do. And it was huge. So that was my Bigfoot experience.
Well, I've actually had something very similar to you. One night, something following me in a field parallel to me, growling to me like a lion or a tiger. We don't have them. Well, we do. You know, there's something out there, possibly a big cat from where I'm from. I mean, there have been reports, sightings of Bigfoot as well in the UK. Yes. But I've never heard anything growl like that. Oh. That low and that deep, and I knew it wasn't a cow or a sheep or anything, you know, domestic, you know, or livestock, anything like that. That was just something completely different that I had no idea what it was.
But where does your head go in that moment? I mean, there was something that Don said earlier, and it just, to me, confirms everything that we believe. You know, reality to me is subjective. You know, because we have a different perception. You know, you have reality and then you have actuality, you know, what's actually there. But like Don said, he never had these experiences before until he became aware of it. And that's why we think awareness is so important, because once you become aware, because you don't know what you don't know, and you start actually looking for these things. I mean, not to say that you can't convince yourself it's something that is not, but I think that's still safer to do than explain it away as something else. You know, even if you hear something, I just believe that people should consider it as a possibility, and maybe they won't be quite so messed up whenever it steps out on them. But that's all. That's all I want. You know, that's all I wanted to say about that. Daniela, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just people react to different ways, don't they? Or they just work things out in different ways. And did you find that, Brent, you were then attracted to other things happening to you? Do you think everything's connected? I know it's quite a wide question, but do you think you know, UFO, Bigfoot? I know people say some people think there's a connection there.
No, you know, I have a hard time with that one. A real hard time with the idea that And I'm not saying it couldn't be possible. I guess one thing I've learned in the years of studying the paranormal is that there really isn't an impossible, but it just doesn't seem likely to me. Now, here's the thing: there are people that have witnessed Bigfoot in the proximity of UFOs, but to me, everything I've learned about them would suggest they are an incredibly curious being, and if we're seeing lights in the sky and paying attention to it, I would imagine they are as well, and are probably drawn to check it out. And perhaps that's when they're seen, is they're so focused on whatever this anomaly is that they're not doing their usual ninja thing, you know. So I
down.
Right. Now, we did receive an email from an abductee, and she said that she was she was in a craft, and she said that she was sitting there, and across in this circular bay area that she was in was what looked to her like what everybody describes as a Bigfoot, and it was, you know, being inspected as well. So I imagine, you know, if UFOs come in and they like to cut up animals like livestock, they like to abduct people. I can't imagine that if indeed the Bigfoot are around, which I believe they are, then they're probably abducting them too and checking them out. You know, they're just another thing that exists here on our planet. Yeah.
Well, you know, if they can find him, they're doing all right, aren't they? Because we're struggling to get hold of one.
Yeah, there is that. Maybe we should get cooperation with them.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, we might
they're probably not using trail cams.
I think they need them.
So in terms of then your UFOs, you said you've had quite a few sightings.
I do. I have one really incredible sighting. And, you know, all my life I've been looking up in the skies because I've always had an open mind for the idea that we're not alone. There's other things here and coming and going. And the idea of extraterrestrial life visiting Earth doesn't seem implausible to me. But I've always been looking, and I was always wondering, what am I doing wrong? Because there's so many people that are seeing things. And I would stare for, you know, hours and hours throughout my life looking at the night sky and not seeing anything. But my first experience seeing a flying saucer was really like life-changing. And what had happened was, it was only 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, 5 years ago, I guess now, but I was actually visiting this very area. I still lived in Minnesota at this time. I was visiting this area because I worked for a company that was headquartered out here. And I flew in, and they said, you know, rather than have you stay in a hotel, do you want to stay up in our mountain cabin and hang out up there? It was all set for them to move into eventually, but they hadn't actually done it yet. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll stay in a mountain cabin. That'd be all right. So I went up there, and he had a pair of night vision binoculars. And, you know, I was really excited to check those out up in the mountains because there's no light pollution. And, you know, I know that most of the stars in our galaxy are actually red stars and aren't really visible with the naked eye. So I wanted to see what the night sky looked like with night vision binoculars. So I went outside, and I'm looking up at the sky, and I'm just blown away because the star field is just like quadrupled with stars. You don't recognize any of the constellations. It's just amazing. And I'm looking around, and then I'm like a kid playing with night vision binoculars. So I'm looking everywhere like, wow, I can see all that stuff and having a good time. And I look down the driveway and can see all the way down to the switchback driveway that they have, because it's in a mountain valley, and one side of the mountain valley is a house, and the other side is just a forest. And on the side it's on is also just a forest with a stream running down in the basin. And I'm looking down the driveway, and then I pan up with these night vision binoculars, and I get above the tree level about 30 feet, and no kidding, right in the sky, right above it is a flying saucer. And it's sitting there hovering, and I'm blown away. It's sitting there, no noise, nothing. Now, there was a bit of ambient moonlight and stuff, so it wasn't like a pitch black night or anything. And I'm looking through the night vision binoculars, and it's the proverbial 2 pie plates separated by these panels of light that would flash in a circular motion. And I'm just blown away. I'm looking at it, and then I think, hey, I'm going to check this out with my own eyes. So I lower the binoculars. I'm looking. I can see above the trees, but nothing's there. There's nothing in the sky above those trees. I put the binoculars up. It's there. Real as day. I take them down. It's not there. I could only see it in the infrared spectrum. And that just blew me away. I was like, oh my God, they could be around us all the time. We just can't see them because apparently they can cloak from our native light spectrum that our eyes perceive. And so I'm just beside myself. I'm doing this for a few minutes, just like, wow, and having the time of my life. But then I realized I'm up in this mountain valley and there's nothing else going on there except me. So if I'm sitting there looking at them, chances are they're in their flying saucer going, hey. So all of a sudden it got incredibly real for me. And I'm like, okay, this is about as real as I want it to be. I'm going in. So I went inside and locked all the doors and sat on the bed for several hours. And I'm peeking out the curtains, to make sure nothing's like landing and coming. But that was the end of the experience. But it was just surreal. It was there. It was real.
Yeah.
It just blew me away.
What do you put the all these lights in the sky down to, Don, do you think?
And Brent, if I don't mention this, Brent's going to point at me again. So just about maybe a month and a half, 2 months ago, I was actually leaving the studio and I'm standing out front and I'm checking my phone. I'm standing out by my pickup. I'm checking my phone and I'm like, okay. And I look up and I'm like, I'm looking at the stars. There's not a whole lot of lights around the studio itself, but there's a lot of light pollution because we're in a small town. And so I look up and I'm like, okay, well, just kind of looking. I went, wait a minute, what's that? And it started moving erratically. It didn't move erratically. It moved in a way that our terrestrial things do not move. It came from the south and it moved north, and then it did this 90-degree angle and came to the east, and then it just stopped. And I just sat there looking at it for a minute. And during this time, I'm trying to watch it, and I'm texting Brent. I'm like, come outside, come outside, come outside. I can't get him. And I stood out there for like 10 minutes, waving my arms. He's in the kitchen of the studio, and I'm just waving. I see a shadow. I'm waving. I'm like, come here, come here, come here. But I didn't want to yell because it's like 10 o'clock at night, right? So so I stepped to the left so I could look around the building, and I see another one doing kind of the same thing. And now here's the thing. Just because it's a UFO, an unidentified flying object, doesn't mean it's alien.
Yeah.
However, when something does a 90-degree turn without an arc, it's a little different. So once again, it's one of those things that say, maybe not everything I see has an explanation, but until I get that explanation or I have an experience more profound, then it makes it a lot more real. However, like I said earlier, it makes sense to me. Ghosts and apparitions and things like that don't make sense to me because there's really nothing we can really see unless they choose you to see it, unless they choose to show themselves to you. But Bigfoot and aliens, just thinking about how, and we were talking about this just an hour ago, no matter how big or small you think the universe is, there's got to be something else out there other than just us. And they've got to be at different technological places in their life. And same thing goes for Bigfoot. As I said earlier, we haven't explored like 700 million square miles of land in the United States that's never been touched by foot, or at least recorded touched by foot, and experience is written. So it's very possible that there's something out there. But seeing that, like I said, I keep my mind open. I like to consider things. Brent says, well, you saw a UFO. Well, yeah, you're right. In the strictest sense, I did. I couldn't tell what it was. So yeah, you're right. But it was an alien. I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder if how do you feel, Brent, about frequencies and whether some of us are tuned in and some of us aren't, and some of us maybe put up a barrier where we don't want to see it, and we're not going to accept it, and whereas others are just naturally tuned into it. I don't know how or why, but what do you feel about that?
Well, I think we know that happens in the field of ghosts, right? Where there are some people that are just tuned in and say they can see spirits, they can communicate with spirits. And then there's the rest of us that are like, why is that person talking to the wall? We don't really translate that. It's hard to understand. But, I do believe that there are people that are gifted in such a way as they can. And so it does, I guess it stands to reason that it would be the same in any other field of the paranormal. Maybe there are people just a little more tuned in and are able to see these things. Like, you know, I haven't seen a Bigfoot yet. I'm interested in seeing them, you know, from a safe distance, you know, but do I have a block? Am I projecting a frequency? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe there is something to that. You might be onto something. I guess I've never considered that.
Well, I have to say though, you know, since I've been doing the show with you, you know, I've become more open because I know, like I said, when I was a kid, yeah, there were Bigfoot stories everywhere. And yeah, of course we told ghost stories and things like that, but it never really affected me. But then again, I came from a place where I had to grow up quick.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was the kid that I say I didn't really have much of a childhood. I wasn't able to imagine and I wasn't allowed to. Not that I couldn't. I wasn't allowed to. Oh, stop daydreaming. You got to stop doing that. That's you know, you grow up. It's time to grow up. It's like I'm 10 years old. You know, what am I supposed to be doing? I'm supposed to be daydreaming. I'm supposed to be doing this stuff. So as you said, Daniela, you know, it's like I was given a wall to build. And I built on that wall. And until just recently, last couple of years, you know, it's like I have to start looking again because it's so much is happening now that I have to open my mind up again and say, you know what's going on. So I do think that maybe we're not tuned in. Maybe we are tuned in. Maybe we've chosen not to tune in, you know, and now it's time to break down that wall and say, if I say this is okay, but I can't say this is okay, I can't do that. So, you know, I think there are times that people choose not to. There are times that people can't, and there are times that people are just clued right in, and those are the people that baffle me. You know, so
yeah, definitely. It's you know, like I said before, there's just too much going on there, and now I think as it's more there's more places for people to come and share this their encounters. There's so much out there, isn't there?
Yeah.
We don't even. I think we've only just kind of scratching the surface of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Scratching the surface and kind of staying on the surface. Well, we do have Shane Carpenter here. Before we bring him in, let's pay a few bills. Just want to remind everybody in the description, you can check out the links for Paranormal Gift Shop. They are revamping things a little bit, so there's not quite as many items in there as they did have, but they will be getting those back up. But still go check them out. Paranormal Gift Shop. They have novelty and gift items from Ghost, Bigfoot, UFO, all that good stuff. Use promo code Bigfoot Odyssey 10. There it is, Bigfoot Odyssey 10, and get a 10% discount. And also, there's a link in the description for my Patriot Supply. Use our special website, preparewithbigfoot.com, and get 48% off of everything they have listed there. That's the 1 week food supply, 4 week food supply, the preparedness kit, fruit and veggie pack, and the fruit pack. I think that's all there's on there right now. And they could be adding more stuff as we speak. I don't know, but go check those things out. We do appreciate it. And ladies and gentlemen,
we've got Shane with us. Hello, Shane. Try again.
Is he on? Where is he? There he is. You got this. Creator and host of OZARK Mountain Sasquatch, Mr. Shane Carpenter. Welcome, Shane.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's good to see you. And I believe you've got some interesting updates on what's been going on in the 400.
Yeah, I'll jump right in. So last time I spoke with you, you know, that last interview, I didn't get too much into the 400, which is the main research area that we're involved in right now. It's private property. Last year I started this thing where I bring in a few guys and we stay 4, 5, 6 days out there. And every single time that we have stayed there now at this point, we've caught thermal, we've gotten audio. It's been pretty crazy. I've been working the property for 3 years. And like I said, we did this twice last year. You know, I have activity when I'm out there on my own on weekends and whatnot, but bringing other people in, you expect things to wind down, but it's actually, for whatever reason, it's gotten better when I bring the guys in. So last Thursday, which was July 11th, Randy Harrington from Kansas, Chris Reinhardt from Connecticut, and Professor Dan Nadrello, he's a biologist, came in from Wisconsin. Dan didn't show up. He wasn't able to get there until about 2:30 Saturday morning. So we got there and we set up camp, did our usual thing. We have a few routines that we go through when we get there. There's this area that we find tracks a lot, but the place we've had a lot of rain here lately, so the place was flooded, or had been flooded, and the water had receded a little bit, but it hadn't receded to the point where we get these tracks. So we kind of abandoned that, and we went in to a place that we call the Hidden Ponds. What was that? I guess that was the second night. The first day after we set up camp, myself and Chris Reinhardt went scouting, and we went down to this holler that the landowner actually calls Sasquatch Holler, and we got onto a trail. It was just a compression trail. It looked like it's been heavily used. This particular hollow I found, me and some of the guys I've worked with in the past, we found deer killed down there with broken necks. There's these arches that I don't put too much into structures myself. Like I need to see it being made to say that, Bigfoot makes these structures, but these arches in particular actually bent back into themselves, and there's 3 of them, right next to each other. So they were odd. I've gotten these low humming sensations in this holler. The property owner has seen 2 of these things walk up out of this holler and go down the tree line, and he's heard them down there many times. So we were investigating this holler. We found this compression trail. We followed it, myself and Chris. We ended up coming across a couple tracks. Then we came across a pile of scat that was full of blackberries and raspberries. And we literally followed the trail out of this holler up into this small field, and the field was just covered with blackberry and raspberry bushes. So kind of gave us a new little area to pay attention to, just some more clues. So Friday night we went into this area called that I call the Hidden Ponds, and we got absolutely nothing. I mean, the first 2 nights were, as far as getting any kind of interaction or thermal footage or anything like that, we got nothing. It was completely dead. What we later found out was that while we were gone, they were actually at our camp. We've got some pretty amazing recordings from our camp while we were gone. We have them coming up and sniffing the microphone. Well, it starts off, just like within minutes of us leaving on the 2 Polarises, we start hearing rocks being thrown into camp, like they're checking to see if anybody's there. And within 5 minutes of the rocks, we hear them coming down the ridge towards camp, and they actually, one of them sniffs the microphone. Randy has this set up. He's got a pop-up that he sets next to his tent, and he has 2 tables that he puts in an L shape, makes a corner out of them, and he puts all of his stuff up on these tables, and he's kind of OCD, so everything's perfect and in the right place. And on the far end is all his equipment, and all these things with zippers on them. And one of the first things that we hear is a zipper. And not only do we hear it once, but 18 times in a row, the zipper unzips and zips back and forth. And then we hear it going slowly, going down the table and turning the corner. And Randy especially, he kind of got obsessed with the audio for a little bit, and he literally found almost everything that we could hear in the audio, within the audio on his tables that they were messing with, going to this metal pan, which actually clanked on another piece of metal. And at the end of his table was a water cooler, a 5-gallon water cooler, and he had wet wipes sitting on top of it. And the wet wipes, when we got back that second night, he immediately noticed that the wet wipes were on the table, and he keeps them up on top of the water cooler. And not only were they on the table, but a wet wipe was pulled out about 3/4 of the way, and it was just filthy dirty. So you know, that was kind of a cool thing. So we are up in the upper part of the property where we usually don't get much. We were, you know, had 2 thermals out in these fields, you know, scanning the tree lines and whatnot. And about 2:30, Dan Nedrolo, the biologist from Wisconsin, calls me. This is Saturday morning. So I run to the vehicles, me and Chris, and we run to get him. We left Randy out in the middle of a field by himself and took off. And we pick up Dan. We get back. We run back out and we grab Randy and we head back down into the bottoms of the property where our main research is. So we get down there. We're just there for maybe 15 or 20 minutes, and Randy reset his FLIR. He's got this FLIR set up, and he kind of, you know, did a few things to set it up for walking, and we took off down this trail from camp. On this particular trail, we have thermal footage from last year that we captured. It's about 3 minutes long. Just down the trail from camp, I have had 2 sightings in the same general area last year, 2 of them on the same day, actually. And this one that I seen that day, I've actually seen a 3rd time, which was the very first day I was out there that I got brought onto the property 3 years ago. So we take off down this trail. We stop, you know, every now and then, and Randy scans and does a 360 with the thermal. His thermal is actually set up on top of a pole, and we actually watch a screen. So if we get a thermal hit, the first thing we do is we turn our backs to the subject. We do that because we have literally watched them react to us turning and facing them. So, you know, Randy found years ago that if you turn your backs to them, that they'll expose themselves and that they can see us even though it's dark. And we've proven this. We got some other thermal footage last year. It's about a 10-minute piece of thermal footage, and this thing is pacing back and forth between these trees. And a couple times during this 10-minute period, I get up, and when I get up, it reacts and you know, jumps behind the tree. Another time, it drops down behind this log. But we know that they can see us no matter how dark it is. I mean, that particular night, you couldn't see your hand in front of your face.
Wow.
So this was our 3rd stop on this trail. Randy does a 360 scan, and he didn't even get the full 360 off, and he says, hey, we got a hit. So we sit there. This was about a 15-minute long ordeal. Randy says we got a hit. We sit and watch it for a few minutes. It's you know, one of the things that we've noticed is when these things don't think that they see you, instead of moving fast, they will move super, super slow. And this is what happens on the FLIR. We're watching this head about 100 feet from us, and it slowly drops. I mean, so slow that you can't even tell it's moving until the head is halfway gone. So we immediately figured that it didn't understand that we knew it was there. So me and Randy and Chris, I've been discussing this with them for some time. You know, I've been doing these same things on this property over and over and over for 3 years, and I felt it was time to push the pedal to the metal a little bit and see what happens. So our plan was, you know, the next time we caught a thermal, that I was going to walk out halfway between the subject and the camera and just sit down with my back to the subject. And so I went out about halfway, and I was fixing to sit down, and I actually turned my flashlight on and could see the head sticking up. And so I sat there for a minute. I turned my flashlight off. I turned it back on, and I could see the shine off its eyes through the grass. This grass was about 3 to 3.5 foot tall, and like I said, it had recently flooded. So when the water came in, you know, you have this 3 foot tall grass. When the water pulls out, it actually pulls the grass down after soaking it in the low areas. So there's all these spots out in this low-lying area where the grass is still high. So it was laying down on its belly behind a large clump of grass, basically. So when I realized that, you know, on the FLIR that night, we couldn't actually see a lot of the trees and whatnot. It cooled off suddenly that afternoon. So there was some small trees between the camera and the subject, and you know, you can't even hardly tell in the original thermal video. But so as I got out there, you know, I start seeing exactly what's there and whatnot. So I walked back to the guys and I said, hey, you know, I'm gonna see how close I can get. So I walked about 2/3 of the way back out and stopped, just to make sure, you know, I wasn't pushing too hard. The last thing I want to do is mess up the situation, because I've been working so long, you know, on this. So I get about maybe 20 foot from it or so, and I hit it with my flashlight, and I can see the eyes shining through the grass. And at this point, it's only bringing its head up high enough to see through the grass. For about, you know, the bottom 1.5 feet or so, it's so thick that the thermal couldn't even see through it. I mean, it was, you know, the base of the grass is super, super thick. So I decided to walk forward, and I end up about 7 or 8 foot from this thing. And basically, I stood there for a moment. You know, my intent was to get as close as I could and then squat down or sit down and turn my back to it. I didn't get quite that far. I squatted down sideways to it, and I never really actually put my back to it once I got that close. So eventually I stood back up, and as I'm doing this, you know, I'm talking calmly, trying to, you know, just put a good vibe out there. I was probably talking more for myself than anything, you know, in the moment. If I said didn't have a little fear, I'd be a liar. It was pretty intense. My adrenaline was pumping, of course, but you know, I was just doing what I felt we needed to do at the time. So I kind of stepped to the right to try to get a look at this thing's body, because I knew that it was you know, obviously it was laying down. So I moved around to the right, and I hit it with the flashlight. And as I did, it brought its head up 1.5 to 2 foot. And at that point, I could see its 3/4 of its face. I could see, you know, that his hair with his face was completely covered with black hair. The eyes were sheening back. A lot of people say they see that when you hit them with the flashlight, they'll be yellow. Well, these were actually like a gold color. I would say they were more gold than yellow. And the most peculiar thing I remember about, you know, all of this as far as details is where the pupils was it was like silver. It was sheening back a silver, like to the point. I think I told you this earlier, Daniela. In art, you know, in basic art, when you want to show something is shining, you put a little cross, a little plus sign coming off of it. You know, that's actually what it looked like. Right. Just super, super silver. It dropped his head down, and it would bring it back up and look at me. Like at this point, I'm literally 7 to 8 foot from this thing. I can see its face. I can hear it moving occasionally, and I also realized at that point that its body had to have been laying the opposite way. So I decided to take a few steps to my left and see if I can get a shot at the body. So I just watched the thermal last night. I want to say I took four steps to my left, and then I heard this sound. It kind of like sent a shiver up my spine, actually. The only thing that I could say that it possibly was, I mean, I don't know this for sure, but you know, you hear people talk about them clacking their teeth. Yeah. That's what my brain told me it was in the moment. Whether it was or not, I don't know. But you know, this thing made this noise. It clacked its teeth or whatever, and then immediately a rock came flying out from my left and landed like literally 6 inches from my left foot. So in the thermal, I'm actually, you know, stepping. I get 4 steps. And on that fourth, as I take that 4th step, I hear the teeth clack, and then the rock hits right in front of me. And I literally there was no stop in my movement. I literally turned back to my left and started walking back to the guys. You know, to me, that was you know, a sign to not approach any further and abandon the situation.
Yeah. You know. What more detail about the face can you tell us? Did you see, you know?
You know, not a whole lot of details. I could see the bridge of the nose. I couldn't see the actual shape of the nose. It was kind of broken up and, you know, through the grass. The eyes were round. The head was round. I actually think that this is the same juvie that I've seen 3 times out there because of the round head. Now, I can't say that for sure because I haven't seen the others. You know, we have their tracks. We have 2 sets of juvenile tracks, 2 different sets, and then we have some 12s and some 15s. So we just assume that, you know, there's 2 adults and 2 juvies, and it's a family unit. Whether that's true or not, I don't know.
I've heard you with your other interview you did, and you said before about the round head. So that's quite interesting to me because you don't often hear about them having round heads, but you have a theory that's they develop.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it a theory or not, but I only say this because it's all I have to go off of, which is my own experiences. You know, my old research area, that there was a young female and a young male, and the young female had a round head also. And this one that I've seen, I'm pretty sure is a young female. I'm not 100% positive. What tells me that is the tracks. I see the same things in the tracks that I used to see in my old area, which the female there had a thinner, more feminine foot, and the young male had a more robust, you know, thicker foot. And so I'm just going off the tracks, you know, to say this is a female, and in the fact that she has a round head. Yeah. I think there's a possibility that the females themselves maybe have a head, you know, when they're younger, and that sagittal crest comes out later. And it's been my experience that the females don't have as big of a sagittal crest as the males do.
Okay.
Now, when do we get to see this?
It's going to be a little while. I'm in the middle of finishing up the first documentary of this series that'll cover everything from last year. And as soon as I'm done with this one, the second one, I'll start the second one, and I'll probably go ahead and include this trip into the second one if everything works out. We've had so much stuff happen out here that I don't want to release just little bits and pieces at a time, because there's a big story at play here. Sure. I've been doing particular things out on this property for 3 years, and it's the same things that I did in my old area that seemed to work for me. And if you know the story of my old area, I ruined it by chasing one of the juveniles one day. I decided that I became impatient, and I wanted to, you know, get proof and show people that this stuff was happening. So I literally gave chase one day, and it ruined the whole situation. All the interaction stopped. So I was blessed enough to be brought into another situation, and I immediately started the same process over. And you know, I've been patient for 3 years now, and it's starting, you know, at least it seems to be paying off now at this point. I've got a plan. I've got a long-term plan, and this was the first real hump in the plan that I needed to get over to, you know, to really prove to not only myself, but the guys that come in and work with me that you know, that moving forward, that things are going to keep getting better.
Well, it sounds like epic footage, but putting
no, I absolutely don't want to overstate the footage, because, you know, Randy Harrington and Professor Dan were about 100 feet from me, and they filmed this all with the FLIR. And there's, you know, once I get up to the subject, you can't even see it because it stays down. So it's literally, you don't even see it on the FLIR anymore because it's hidden behind this grass.
So you're not holding the FLIR.
Excuse me?
So you're not holding the FLIR. They're
No. And this, you know, this is the whole process of this is, you know, I didn't want a camera on with me going out, you know, to see how close you get to this thing. You know, they tend to stray from cameras, and the last thing I wanted to do was be trying to film it in that moment, because if I ruin the moment, there's not going to be another moment. And, you know, my plan is to eventually be able to get, you know, within 10 foot of these things at sunrise and get that footage. But I don't want to push too hard and ruin the situation. You know, that's the biggest thing at this point right now.
What about
I'm glad you came and just shared that little bit with us, though, because I know you was really excited about it. But and I know you want to try and keep some stuff hidden from us for now. But if you have any more exciting news, then do get in touch, because we will want to know about it.
Cool.
She comes out, obviously.
For Professor Dan, this was his first real, you know, his first encounter out in the field, and he's been doing this a long time. So it was really cool to have him there, and him witnessing the behaviors on the fur and all this stuff before I went out there. We learned a ton on this expedition, and each time we go out there and we get new things, we start learning more. And like when we first started doing this, we leave. Randy sets up a parabolic mic, a really cool parabolic mic setup. It doesn't have the dish on it. It's actually, the mic sticks out at the end of a box. But long story short, he has this really cool setup that works. And we leave that recording at camp, and we leave, and this is the first time that they've actually entered camp. When we went to this place called Crawler Hill, this is another place where we usually get action. We hiked there in the middle of the night from base camp, and we got nothing, absolutely nothing. We were surprised, and it turned out, the whole time we were gone, they were in camp. We actually realized that this is kind of a funny little story. Throughout this whole ordeal, I bought this new cooler, and you have to snap it shut. And I kept, every now and then we would take off and we would come back, and I would notice that the cooler wasn't shut. And, we had to refill on ice an extra time this time. And, it was just, I kept going, man, I asked the guys, make sure you shut this cooler. One of you guys are leaving this cooler open. And, in one of the audio captures, where literally 2 minutes, you hear the Polarises coming down the trail, and they'd been rummaging through stuff, and you hear the cooler lid drop shut. And the morning before, Chris Reinhardt had woken up. He drinks these Monster coffees, and he had probably, I think, 24 of them in there. And he woke up, and we're eating breakfast, and he goes to get one, and he's like, man, have I been drinking that many of these things? He was like floored. And then we hear, the lid being dropped shut, but not snapped closed. And, of course, we put 2 and 2 together, and we think that they were actually stealing his Monster coffees. So now that they're coming into base camp, I go out there on weekends, and so I'm going to start taking a Monster coffee and leaving it on this stump that's next to camp. And, if they like them, I'm going to oblige for sure, whatever works.
Absolutely. We are coming up on the end of our hour. You guys have any questions for Brent, Don, or Shane? We'll be taking those right now. We got one here from, this is our good buddy, Carl Gotro. Shane, have you ever seen red eye shine?
I have, actually. I've only seen eye shine one time. I'm involved with a group out of Colorado called SASQUATCH Investigations of the Rockies. And a lady named Robin Roberts came down when I first started this in 2013. And I took her out to my research area, and I watched 2 sets of eyes go from white to red. Kind of blew my mind. I'd never seen anything like that. I have to see it to believe it. I'm one of those guys. And I have to have some kind of proof, and I'd heard about this and never really put too much into it. And then I see it, and she was standing there beside me when it happened. And so other than that, I haven't. That's literally that's the only time I've seen any kind of eye shine. And I call that eye shine because we weren't shining flashlights in that direction. There was, white. 2 sets of white glowing eyes in the woods that turned red. It was pretty wild.
All right. We have one here.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you got it, Daniela? All right.
I got that one for Brent. Yeah.
Brent. This is from one of our watchdog moderators, 5 Hazel. Brent, did you feel what somewhat felt like a force field?
I'm wondering what the context of that is.
I think it might be when you saw the UFO. If it's in regards to the UFO, no, I didn't. Again, it was probably about 200 yards away from me, so it wasn't like right above my head. I just know that it wasn't visible in the native light spectrum that our eyes perceive, but it was an infrared. But I wasn't close enough that I would think that I would have felt a force field type of effect if there was one. But great question. If I can, what about with the Sasquatch? Because people, from stories I've read,
all I felt was fear. Raw fear.
That's a force field.
that was my own bubble. But no. I don't think I felt that, but thank you for asking.
All right, we'll take one more, and then we'll take it on home.
Well, Randy's asked this twice. Your friend Shane, he wants you to explain the next day. So did something happen?
So yeah, Randy was there. Randy was a big part of this, man. So the next day we do our due diligence. We go back out and we we found where the thing was. We put the floor back in the same position and we did a reenactment. And I know what he's wanting me to talk about. So yeah, I'm into tracking. So I absolutely love tracking. So we go back, we do the reenactment, and after we do the reenactment, I go out behind where the subject was, and myself and Chris Reinhardt, and sure enough, we find the 12-inch tracks, which is the mother, what we believe is the mother's tracks. So we know that Mama was there the night before, and she's probably the one that threw the rock. And more than anything, the important thing for us that blew us away was that we realized that Mama was there and that she allowed me to get that close, which is, for what we're doing and the way we're doing things, was a big deal, for the adult to let me get that close to one of the juveniles. So yeah, it was huge for us. That was like just as big as what happened the night before to us, was the fact that she allowed that to happen and was there watching.
Awesome. That's it's all incredible to me. Well, we want to thank our guests for coming on tonight. Shane Carpenter, everybody go check out Ozark Mountain Sasquatch. You can find that on YouTube, the 30+ videos on there. And our good friends, Brent Thomas and Don Longbeard, please go check out the Paranormal Portal. Those guys are doing great work over there, and we certainly appreciate all you guys for showing up here with us tonight. Absolutely fantastic. As always, the lovely Daniela Aiolo, our producer and co-host, and the one that really puts all of this together. All I have to do is show up. So we definitely appreciate her. Check out the links in the description for Paranormal Gift Shop. Use promo code Bigfoot Odyssey 10 and my Patriot Supply, our special website, preparewithbigfoot.com. And this Wednesday on the Researchers Report, we're going to be going at 7 p.m. Central. And who's on, Daniela?
We've got Max Powers on.
Max Powers,
I believe.
Yeah.
I should have double checked, but I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Speaking to Max tomorrow as well. If you're listening, Max, I'm going to be calling you tomorrow. I'm going to have a quick chat. So
awesome. I do know the Paranormal Portal is going to be having a show here in about an hour, huh, guys?
Yeah, we're up on deck. So
all right, I'm going to come over and have a look anyway, I think.
All right.
Well, thank you so much, Shane, Brent, and Don. Everybody, y'all have a good evening.
Excellent.
Thanks for having me.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.